A young black woman is humiliated by security guards at a political event, but they didn't know she was the daughter of the president. Sophia entered the grand hall of the political event, her heart steady as she looked around. She was dressed impeccably, wearing a tailored dress that complemented her graceful demeanor. As she walked through the crowd, she noticed a few people staring at her, their gazes filled with suspicion rather than curiosity. Sophia tried to focus on the purpose of her visit, but the uneasy feeling of being watched closely was hard to shake. She continued to move through the event, listening to speeches and observing the interactions between politicians and guests. Yet, the feeling of being out of place lingered in the back of her mind. It wasn't long before two security guards, both large and imposing, began following her from a distance. Their eyes were filled with distrust, and they exchanged suspicious glances as they whispered among themselves. Sophia noticed their presence but chose to ignore it, hoping it was just routine security. As she approached one of the food stands, hoping to grab a quick bite, the guards suddenly stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "Excuse me, miss," one of them said in a stern voice. "Can we see your invitation?" Sophia remained calm, despite the rising tension. She reached into her bag and pulled out her invitation, handing it to the guard with a polite smile. "Here it is," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. The guard glanced at the invitation but didn't seem satisfied. "And what's your business here?" he asked, his tone even more confrontational. Sophia felt a wave of frustration but kept her composure. "I'm here as a guest, just like everyone else," she replied. "I was invited." The second guard stepped closer, towering over her. "You sure about that?" he asked, his voice dripping with skepticism. "You don't exactly look like you belong here." The humiliation started to set in as Sophia realized that their aggression was rooted in something far deeper than just security protocol. She tried to explain calmly, "I was personally invited to this event. I have every right to be here." But the guards weren't convinced. "Why don't you step outside with us so we can clear this up?" one of them suggested, his words more of a command than a request. Sophia's heart pounded, but she knew she couldn't back down. "I'm not going anywhere," she stated firmly. "I've done nothing wrong, and I'm staying right here." The situation began to draw the attention of nearby guests, who started whispering among themselves, sensing that something was wrong. The guards, now more aggressive, moved closer, making it clear that they weren't asking her to leave. They were telling her. Sophia's calm exterior belied the storm of emotions raging inside her. She knew she had to stand her ground, but the weight of the situation was beginning to press heavily on her. The humiliation of being publicly questioned and disrespected was almost too much to bear, but she couldn't let them see her falter. The guards were insistent, their voices growing louder as they demanded that she leave. Sophia, refusing to be intimidated, remained where she was, and determined to prove that she belonged there just as much as anyone else. The security guards decided that Sophia shouldn't be at the event, ignoring her calm explanations and insisting that she leave. "Miss, you need to come with us now," one of the guards said, his tone harsh and impatient. Sophia tried once more to assert her right to be there, explaining that she was indeed invited and had every reason to stay. But the guards weren't listening. They were convinced she was in the wrong place, and their aggression only grew as she continued to resist. "I'm telling you, I was invited," Sophia repeated, her voice firm but laced with frustration. "I'm not leaving. I have as much right to be here as anyone else." But her words seemed to bounce off the guards as if they hadn't heard her at all. Instead, they grabbed her by the arm, their grip tight and unyielding, as they began to forcibly escort her toward the exit. A few guests had started to notice what was happening, their curious glances turning into murmurs of concern. Some even took out their phones, recording the incident as it unfolded. Sophia's heart raced as she realized the situation was spiraling out of control, but she refused to let them drag her out without a fight. "Let go of me," Sophia demanded, trying to pull her arm free from the guard's grasp. But they tightened their hold, pushing her closer to the exit. The humiliation she felt was overwhelming, a mix of anger, fear, and disbelief. How could they treat her like this, with such blatant disrespect and disregard for her dignity? The guards continued to push Sophia toward the door, oblivious to the growing attention from the crowd. Each step felt like a blow to her pride, but she knew she couldn't give up now. Just as they were about to reach the exit, a voice called out from across the room. "What's going on here?" The guards paused, looking up to see one of the event organizers hurrying toward them. He was a middle-aged man with a concerned expression, clearly alarmed by the scene unfolding before him. "Why are you escorting this guest out?" he asked, his eyes shifting between the guards and Sophia. "She doesn't belong here," one of the guards replied gruffly. "We're just doing our job." The organizer looked at Sophia, his brow furrowing as recognition dawned on him. "Wait a minute," he said, his tone changing from confusion to alarm. "I know who she is. You need to let her go right now." The guards hesitated, clearly surprised by the organizer's reaction. "Sir, we were just trying to," one of them began, but the organizer cut him off. "Stop! You have no idea who you're dealing with," the organizer said, his voice rising. He turned to Sophia, his face pale with realization. "I'm so sorry, miss. I didn't realize." Sophia finally managed to pull her arm free, rubbing the sore spot where the guard had gripped her. Her composure wavered, but she held her head high, refusing to let the tears welling up in her eyes fall. The organizer, now clearly panicked, motioned for the guards to step back. "Please, miss," the organizer said, his voice trembling. "Come with me. Let me make this right." Sophia stared at him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she nodded, allowing him to guide her back into the event. The guards stood frozen, realizing too late the gravity of their mistake. The tension in the room was palpable as Sophia followed the organizer back into the event. She could feel the eyes of the guests on her, the weight of their stares heavy on her shoulders. The murmurs had grown louder, the incident now the center of attention. People whispered among themselves, wondering what had just happened and who she really was. As they walked, the organizer kept glancing at Sophia, his face etched with concern and guilt. "I deeply apologize for what just happened," he said quietly, trying to maintain some privacy in the midst of the chaos. "Those guards didn't know who you were, and they completely overstepped. I promise this won't happen again." Sophia remained silent, her emotions still raw from the confrontation. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but she knew that now wasn't the time. She needed to compose herself before addressing what had just occurred. The organizer led her to a private room at the back of the event space, away from the prying eyes of the guests. Once inside, the door closed behind them, and Sophia finally let out a shaky breath. The organizer turned to her, his expression a mix of remorse and anxiety. "Miss, I don't know how to make up for what just happened," he began, his voice low and earnest. "But please understand, this was a misunderstanding, a terrible one. Those guards will be dealt with immediately." Sophia looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. "A misunderstanding?" she repeated, her voice trembling with emotion. "They humiliated me in front of everyone. They treated me like I didn't belong, like I was some kind of threat." The organizer nodded, his guilt evident. "You're absolutely right. There's no excuse for their behavior. I should have been more attentive to who was entering the event. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to make this right." Sophia took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I'm not just any guest," she said, her voice firm but controlled. "I'm here because I was personally invited by the president, and not just as a guest. I'm his daughter." The organizer's eyes widened in shock, his face turning pale as the realization of what had just happened fully sank in. "The president's daughter," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Oh my God!" Sophia could see the panic set in, the organizer now fully grasping the gravity of the situation. "I need to speak to my father," she continued, her tone unyielding. "This needs to be addressed immediately." The organizer nodded frantically, already pulling out his phone. "Of course, miss. I'll arrange for you to speak with him right away. Please understand that this was a grave mistake. The president will be informed of everything that has happened, and I'll do whatever it takes to ensure those responsible are held accountable." Sophia watched as he made the call, her mind racing with thoughts of how this incident could impact her father's reputation. The president had always been a strong advocate for equality and justice, and this kind of treatment toward his daughter would undoubtedly stir up controversy. As the organizer spoke urgently into the phone, Sophia took a moment to steady her breathing. The humiliation she had just endured was still fresh, but now was the time to shift focus. She had to think about the bigger picture, about how this would affect her family, her father's presidency, and the message it sent to the public. The door to the private room opened, and Sophia's father, the president, walked in, his expression serious yet calm. "Sophia," he said softly, immediately crossing the room to embrace her. "I heard what happened. Are you okay?" Sophia returned the embrace, finally allowing herself to feel the comfort of her father's presence. "I'm okay now," she replied, her voice steadying, "but we need to talk about what just happened." Sophia stood in the room with her father, the weight of the incident still heavy on her mind. The president looked at her with a mixture of concern and determination, clearly understanding the gravity of the situation. "Tell me everything," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I need to know exactly what happened." Taking a deep breath, Sophia recounted the entire event. The suspicious stares, the aggressive questioning, the physical confrontation, and the humiliation she felt as the guards tried to forcibly remove her from the venue. She described how they had disregarded her attempts to explain, treating her as though she didn't belong, simply because of how she looked. Her father listened intently, his expression growing more serious with each detail. When she finished, he sighed deeply, his face tight with anger and disappointment. "This is unacceptable," he said, his voice low but seething with controlled fury. "Those guards had no right to treat you that way. No one should be treated like that, especially not in a place that's supposed to represent the ideals of our nation." Sophia nodded, her eyes reflecting the same resolve as her father's. "It wasn't just about me, Dad. It's about what this says to everyone watching. People need to know that this kind of behavior won't be tolerated, not by you, not by anyone." The president agreed. "You're right. This incident needs to be addressed publicly, and those responsible must be held accountable. But we need to handle this carefully. The last thing we want is for this to turn into a political scandal that detracts from the real issue: respect and equality for all people, regardless of who they are or where they come from." Sophia appreciated her father's strategic thinking, but she was determined to ensure that the message was clear. "We can't let them off easy," she insisted. "They need to face the consequences of their actions, and the public needs to see that justice is being done. If we don't make a strong statement, it will only send the message that this kind of treatment is acceptable." The president nodded, his mind already working on the best course of action. "We'll release a statement addressing what happened, but I want you to be a part of it. Your voice needs to be heard, Sophia. This isn't just about me as the president. It's about you and what you stand for." Sophia felt a surge of pride at her father's words. He had always taught her to stand up for what was right, to use her voice to make a difference. Now, more than ever, she was ready to do just that. "I'm ready," she said, her voice filled with determination. "Let's make sure people understand that this can't happen again. Not to me, not to anyone." Her father placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We will. But first, we need to speak with the event organizers and those involved. They need to understand the full impact of their actions before we go public." Sophia agreed, and together they left the private room to address the situation head-on. As they walked through the event, guests who had witnessed the earlier altercation looked on, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. Sophia held her head high, determined not to let the humiliation she had endured define her. The president and Sophia approached the event organizer, who was waiting nervously with the two security guards. The guards' faces were pale, their previous arrogance replaced with visible fear and regret. The organizer stepped forward, bowing his head slightly in apology. "Mr. President, Miss Sophia, I'm deeply sorry for what has happened here today." The president nodded but didn't immediately respond, letting the weight of the moment hang in the air. Sophia, standing beside him, looked directly at the guards, her gaze unwavering. "What you did today was wrong," she said, her voice clear and steady. "You judged me without knowing who I was, and you treated me with disrespect and aggression. That's not just about me. That's about how you see people who you think don't belong." The guards hung their heads, too ashamed to meet her eyes. The president finally spoke, his voice authoritative yet measured. "My daughter deserves the same respect as any guest at this event. You have failed in your duty, not just to her, but to the values that this event and our country stands for. There will be consequences, and they will be fair, but they will be firm. The aftermath of the confrontation left a ripple effect throughout the event and beyond. Sophia's confrontation with the guards had been witnessed by too many people for it to be kept under wraps, and the news quickly spread. The story of the president's daughter being mistreated at a political event by security guards who didn't recognize her was soon all over the media, and the public's response was immediate and powerful. Sophia sat with her father in his office, the atmosphere tense as they watched the news coverage unfold. Reporters discussed the incident with a mix of outrage and shock, questioning how something like this could happen at such a high-profile event. The president remained calm, his expression thoughtful as he considered how best to respond. "People are demanding answers," Sophia said, breaking the silence. "They want to know what we're going to do about this." The president nodded, his eyes fixed on the screen. "We need to address this head-on. The public needs to see that we're taking this seriously and that we're committed to making sure it doesn't happen again." Sophia agreed. But it's not just about punishing the guards. This is about addressing the underlying issues, the prejudice, the assumptions that led them to treat me the way they did. We need to turn this into an opportunity to educate and change mindsets. Her father looked at her, pride evident in his eyes. "You're right, Sophia. This isn't just about one incident. It's about the bigger picture. We need to use this moment to make a real impact." With that in mind, they began to plan their response. The president would hold a press conference to address the incident, but it would be more than just an apology. It would be a call to action, a challenge to the nation to confront the biases and prejudices that still existed in society. Sophia would stand beside him, not just as his daughter, but as a voice for those who had experienced similar treatment, but didn't have the platform to speak out. The press conference was scheduled for the next day, and as the time approached, Sophia felt a mixture of nerves and determination. She knew that this was an important moment, not just for her, but for countless others who would be watching. This was her chance to make a difference, to turn her personal experience into a powerful message for change. When the moment finally arrived, Sophia and her father stepped up to the podium together. The room was packed with reporters, cameras flashing as they waited for the president to speak. He began by addressing the incident, describing what had happened, and acknowledging the pain and humiliation Sophia had endured. He then shifted the focus to the broader issue, speaking passionately about the need for respect and equality for all people, regardless of their appearance or background. Sophia listened, her heart swelling with pride as her father spoke. When he finished, he turned to her, and she stepped forward to address the room. The cameras zoomed in on her, capturing every word as she spoke from the heart. "What happened to me was wrong," Sophia began, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "But what's even more important is that this happens to people every day, all over the country. They're judged, disrespected, and mistreated because of who they are or how they look. That's not just unfair, it's unacceptable." She continued, her words powerful and clear. "We have to do better. We have to confront our own biases, challenge our assumptions, and treat each other with the dignity and respect that everyone deserves. This is our chance to make a change, to stand up for what's right, and to ensure that no one else has to go through what I did." The room was silent as she finished, the weight of her message hanging in the air. Sophia looked out at the sea of faces, hoping that her words had reached them, that they would carry the message forward. As she stepped back, her father placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of support and solidarity. The press conference ended, but Sophia knew that this was just the beginning. The real work lay ahead, turning words into action, ensuring that the changes they spoke of would take root and grow. But for now, she felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that she had taken the first step toward making a difference. The press conference had sparked a wave of discussion across the nation, with the media covering every angle of the story. Sophia's words had resonated with many, and the president's commitment to addressing the issue was widely praised. Yet the real challenge lay in translating the public outcry into tangible change. The following days were busy for both Sophia and her father as they worked to implement the measures they had discussed. The president's office was inundated with calls and messages of support, but also criticism and demands for more concrete actions. It was clear that the incident had struck a chord, and people were eager to see how the administration would respond. One of the first steps was to meet with the event organizers and security personnel involved in the incident. Sophia and her father, accompanied by key advisors, convened with the organizers to discuss the incident in detail. The atmosphere in the meeting room was tense, with the organizers and security guards looking uneasy. The president started the meeting by reiterating the seriousness of the situation. This meeting is to ensure that we fully understand what went wrong and to prevent such incidents from occurring in the future, he said. We need to address not just the immediate issue, but also the underlying problems that allowed this to happen. The event organizers and security guards offered their apologies once again, their faces showing genuine remorse. They explained their procedures and the training their staff underwent, but it was clear that their system had failed in this instance. Sophia spoke up, her tone firm but respectful. It's not just about correcting mistakes. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels safe and respected. We need to address the biases that led to this situation and ensure that such behavior is not tolerated. The meeting concluded with a plan to implement new training programs for security personnel, focusing on diversity and inclusion. The president also announced that a review of event security procedures would be conducted to prevent similar incidents in the future. The changes were aimed at ensuring that all guests, regardless of their background, were treated with the respect and dignity they deserved. In addition to these measures, the president's office began working on a nationwide campaign to promote awareness and education about respect and equality. The campaign would include public service announcements, educational materials for schools, and community outreach programs. The goal was to address and challenge biases at all levels of society. As part of the campaign, Sophia agreed to participate in several interviews and public events. She wanted to use her platform to amplify the message of respect and equality. Her first appearance was at a community event focused on youth empowerment. Standing in front of a crowd of young people, Sophia shared her story and spoke about the importance of standing up for oneself and others. The incident at the event was painful, she told the audience. But it was also an opportunity to highlight a bigger issue, how we treat each other. Every one of us has a role to play in creating a more inclusive and respectful society. Her words were met with applause and cheers, the crowd responding with enthusiasm. It was clear that her message was having an impact, inspiring others to think more deeply about the issues of prejudice and respect. Despite the positive reception, Sophia knew that change wouldn't happen overnight. The campaign was just beginning, and there was a lot of work to be done to ensure that the message reached every corner of the country. She continued to engage with communities, participating in discussions and listening to people's experiences and perspectives. Through it all, Sophia remained determined. She knew that the incident had been a painful experience, but it had also provided an opportunity for growth and change. The challenges ahead were significant, but she was ready to face them head-on, driven by the belief that true progress required persistent effort and unwavering commitment. As the campaign gained momentum, Sophia felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road to equality and respect was long and winding, but she was determined to help pave the way for a better future. As the nationwide campaign on respect and equality took off, the momentum began to build. Sophia and the president's office faced numerous challenges, but they were making visible strides in promoting change. Community meetings, school programs, and public service announcements were generating widespread discussions about bias, inclusion, and the importance of treating everyone with dignity. However, not everyone was supportive of the changes. Some critics argued that the focus on the incident was diverting attention from other pressing issues. Others believed that the campaign was merely symbolic and questioned its effectiveness. Despite these criticisms, Sophia and her father remained resolute, understanding that any significant shift in societal attitudes required time and persistence. One particular challenge arose when the president was scheduled to visit a major city to further promote the campaign. The visit was meant to be a highlight, demonstrating the administration's commitment to the cause and providing a platform for Sophia to share her message with a broader audience. However, just days before the visit, a controversy erupted in the city that threatened to overshadow the event. A local incident involving a police officer and a member of the community had sparked protests and heated debates. The situation was tense, and the media was focused on the unfolding drama. The president's team was concerned that the visit might be seen as an attempt to divert attention from the ongoing conflict. Sophia, aware of the potential complications, suggested an alternative approach. Instead of focusing solely on our planned event, let's use this opportunity to address the situation in the city directly, she proposed. We can incorporate a discussion on the ongoing issues into our visit, showing that we're not just addressing one incident, but engaging with the broader context of social justice and reform. Her father agreed, and they quickly adjusted their plans. The visit was restructured to include a series of community dialogues where local leaders, activists, and residents could openly discuss their concerns and experiences. The president and Sophia would attend these dialogues, providing support and listening to the community's voices. On the day of the visit, the atmosphere in the city was charged with anticipation. The streets were lined with people holding signs and banners, expressing their demands for justice and change. The president and Sophia arrived to a mixed reception. Some greeted them with hope and optimism, while others were skeptical about their intentions. The community dialogues began, and the president and Sophia took part in candid discussions with local residents. The conversations were intense, addressing not only the recent incident, but also the broader issues of systemic bias and the need for reform. Sophia spoke directly to the concerns of the community, sharing her own experiences and expressing solidarity with their struggles. "Listening to your stories today has been deeply moving," Sophia said during one of the dialogues. "It's clear that the issues we're addressing are much bigger than any single event. We need to work together to create real and lasting change, and that starts with understanding and acknowledging the pain and challenges faced by communities." The dialogues were emotionally charged but productive. They provided a platform for honest conversations and fostered a sense of shared purpose among participants. The president's presence and Sophia's personal involvement helped to bridge the gap between the administration and the community, showing a commitment to addressing the concerns raised. In the days following the visit, the president's office worked to incorporate the feedback from the dialogues into their ongoing campaign. New initiatives were launched to address the specific issues raised, including additional support for community programs and increased funding for local organizations working on social justice. Sophia continued her advocacy, participating in interviews and public forums to maintain momentum and keep the conversation alive. She also began working on a book about her experiences and the lessons learned from the campaign, aiming to inspire others and provide a resource for those interested in social change. As the campaign progressed, the impact of the president's and Sophia's efforts became more evident. Public attitudes began to shift, and discussions about respect and equality were more frequent and open. The campaign was far from over, but the progress made was a testament to the power of persistence and the importance of addressing both individual incidents and systemic issues. Sophia felt a growing sense of accomplishment as she saw the changes taking shape. The journey had been challenging, but it had also been deeply rewarding. She knew that the road to true equality was long, but she remained committed to the cause, driven by the belief that every step forward, no matter how small, contributed to a better future for all. Months after the campaign began, the landscape had transformed significantly. The president's commitment to addressing systemic issues and promoting equality had yielded noticeable changes. Schools had incorporated new curricula on diversity and respect, community programs were receiving increased support, and discussions about social justice were more prevalent in the media and public discourse. Despite this progress, Sophia and her father knew that maintaining momentum and ensuring the sustainability of these changes would require continued effort. One morning, Sophia received a call from the president's office informing her of a new development. A major corporation, which had been a significant sponsor of the political event where Sophia was initially mistreated, had requested a meeting. The company wanted to discuss their involvement in the campaign and explore ways they could contribute to the ongoing efforts for social change. Sophia was intrigued and somewhat cautious. The corporation had been a prominent player in the media throughout the campaign, and their motives were not immediately clear. Nevertheless, she agreed to the meeting, understanding the importance of engaging with various sectors to build a broad coalition for change. The meeting took place in a sleek boardroom with representatives from the corporation presenting their agenda. The company's CEO, a poised and articulate woman named Jessica, addressed Sophia and her father with a tone of sincere concern. "We've been closely following the campaign and the impact it's had," Jessica began. "We recognize that we have a role to play in promoting respect and inclusion, not just through our sponsorships, but in our practices and outreach. We want to collaborate on initiatives that can drive real change and demonstrate our commitment to these values." The discussion was constructive. The corporation proposed several ideas, including funding for community projects, partnerships with educational institutions to develop anti-bias training programs, and support for grassroots organizations working on social justice issues. They also expressed a willingness to publicly acknowledge their role in the campaign and commit to internal reforms within their company. Sophia was encouraged by the corporation's willingness to engage, but remained cautious. "It's important to ensure that these initiatives are more than just symbolic," she said. "We need concrete actions and measurable outcomes. The commitment to change must be reflected in both your corporate practices and your community contributions." Jessica assured Sophia that the company was prepared to back their proposals with concrete actions and regular reporting on progress. "We understand that actions speak louder than words," she said. "We're committed to transparency and accountability as we move forward." The meeting concluded with an agreement to collaborate on several key initiatives. Sophia and her father were satisfied with the corporation's commitment and the potential for positive impact. They would work together to ensure that the initiatives were implemented effectively and that progress was monitored and communicated to the public. As the collaboration unfolded, Sophia continued to engage with various communities and advocate for ongoing change. She participated in panel discussions, workshops, and media interviews, using her platform to keep the conversation about respect and equality alive. Her book, which detailed her experiences and the broader lessons of the campaign, was published to positive reviews and furthered her influence as an advocate for social justice. The corporation's initiatives began to show results. Community programs funded by the partnership flourished. Educational programs on diversity reached thousands of students, and the company's internal reforms were recognized as a model for other organizations. The collaboration demonstrated that corporate involvement could indeed contribute to meaningful change when accompanied by genuine commitment and transparency. Despite the progress, Sophia knew that the journey was ongoing. The campaign had raised awareness and initiated reforms, but the fight for equality and respect required persistent effort from everyone. She remained dedicated to her role, driven by the belief that lasting change came from continuous engagement and collective action. Reflecting on the journey, Sophia felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The initial incident had been painful and humiliating, but it had also sparked a movement that was making a real difference. She was proud of the strides that had been made and optimistic about the future. The work was far from over, but Sophia was committed to continuing the fight for a more inclusive and respectful society, knowing that every step forward contributed to a better world for all.